Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us, joining Innovigilance International Academy for our monthly webinar from over the world. Thank you. Today we were talking about how to ensure an effective quality system in pharmacovigilance activities. So stay with us. Hello again. Thank you for joining us from all over the world, our followers, our students, and all pharmacovigilance and drug safety, and of course, professionals within the pharmaceutical industry and all over. So yeah, as I mentioned, today we have a special guest. We will talk about key areas in drug safety and pharmacovigilance, and about all the importance of the quality within the PV or pharmacovigilance and drug safety field. So let me please introduce myself. Then I will introduce our special guest today. So my name is Omar Aimer. My name is Omar Aimer. I'm a pharmacovigilance and drug safety specialist or safety officer based in Montreal, Quebec, in Canada. So in my education, I was graduated as a pharmacist from the University of Oran in Algeria, then with a PhD in pharmacology in the University of Algiers in Algeria as well. Then I moved to Paris when I had and earned a master science in the industrial pharmacy, then a master science in pharmacovigilance and drug safety from the University Paris Descartes in France as well. About my career as well, so I was a lecturer on pharmacology at the University of Oran, and a quality control, the director for quality control of pharmaceutical products. Then I moved also to Paris when I worked as a pharmacovigilance pharmacist and a pharmacovigilance and drug device safety pharmacist in the greater hospitals of Paris. 4 years ago, I moved to Montreal in Quebec, Canada, here in North America, when I joined big pharmaceutical companies as a pharmacovigilance and drug safety, drug and device safety specialist. Then also be a speaker and chair of roundtables at the World Congress or World Drug Safety Congress, Americas and Europe. I'm author of articles on artificial intelligence impact on pharmacovigilance. I'm also a member and executive committee member of the International Society of Pharmacovigilance within the North American chapter. And I earned also my certification in improving global health, focusing on safety and quality from the Harvard University in 2020. So let's talk about our guest today. So our guest is Kishan Nanda. So thank you for joining us and for accepting our invitation. Kishan is a bachelor, has a bachelor of pharmacy and master science in pharmacology. He is also certified as a lead auditor in pharmacovigilance, and he is currently a PVQA or pharmacovigilance QA manager and lead auditor at Astellas Pharma, US, based in the greater Chicago area. So Kishan is an expert in pharmacovigilance and quality assurance professional that has accumulated diverse experience in the field. He holds Masters in Regulatory Affairs from the Northeastern University of Boston. He is also a certified ISO lead auditor and certified biomedical auditor. He has worked with many small and big pharmaceutical companies and CROs, including Pfizer, J&J, Just Pharma, Ethypharm, Cognizant, Covance, and finally now with Astellas Pharma. He is serving at Astellas Pharma as a PVQA manager and lead auditor, ensuring quality and compliance in pharmacovigilance processes. He has authored also and self-published a book on writing periodic adverse drug experience reports, the PADERs, in the US, United States. He is currently working on another book that will focus on quality management systems and audits in pharmacovigilance. He has delivered presentations and talks at many conferences, including the World Drug Safety Congress and Drug Safety USA. He runs a small YouTube channel with his name where he shares tutorials on many current topics in pharmacovigilance, along with career advice for new pharmacovigilance and drug safety professionals entering the field. So join me, please, to welcome our guest today, Kishan. Thank you. Hello, Kishan.
Hello, Dr. Omar. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, let me know if we run into any technological snag. And it's lovely to be interacting with you. I'm sure it's going to be a fascinating discussion that we are going to have today. By no means I am an expert. I'm still evolving in the field, but I applaud you, or I appreciate you for calling me that. And yeah, you certainly know how to make people feel good about themselves. So thank you for the generous introduction.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we are really really happy to have you today. Thank you for accepting our invitation to share your knowledge and to share your experience with our attendees about the QA in pharmacovigilance, which is one of the key areas in drug safety and pharmacovigilance. Yeah, I will, as I mentioned, I have some questions for you, and we will move also for questions from the audience. So my first question is, how do you define quality system for pharmacovigilance activities, and why is it important, and what are its objectives?
Sure. So yeah, that's a great question. In fact, quality system can be defined in various ways depending upon what regulatory industry that you are operating in. I think I have my definition of what a quality system is in pharmacovigilance, which attempts to cover almost all key aspects that we have in quality system. So I like to define it as set of provisions, enforceable controls, and documented instructions for the conduct of required pharmacovigilance activities with a focus on quality and compliance. So last part is definitely important. We need to have a quality system that gives us the instruction to perform all of the required activities with a focus on quality and compliance. So it should tell us how to do certain activities, what should be the desired outcomes of the activities that we are performing. Apart from that, I believe it is also important to have the instructions on how we can track the performance, quality and compliance in the activities that we are performing. Of course, there are two ways. One would be the concurrent way of doing this analysis in form of performance indicators, quality indicators. The other one would be the retrospective analysis, why we do audits and inspections, of course. And lastly, of course, it should tell us how to document all of these activities. What should be the data integrity principles, and what should be other instructions when it comes to archival of those documents as well. So yeah, basically, this is all the quality system in pharmacovigilance in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you. I'm always impressed with our colleagues within pharmacovigilance and drug safety department, doing this part of activity QA, how they track the compliance, also track the root causes about the deviations, all of that. So I'm really impressed about your professionalism and how to support also other colleagues within the department. The second
Right.
question.
Right. Before we move forward, yeah, I think I just a small note. As you said, yeah, it's very important to have a quality system in any regulatory industry, as you hinted. In pharmacovigilance, in fact, there are a couple of regulatory or legislative references or standards that we can use, that we can get the inspirations from, that we also have to comply to, by the way, of course, to build the quality system in our own company. GVP Module 1 would be the go-to reference, of course. If you look at the FDA's regulations, that would be 21 CFR 314.80 for post-marketing pharmacovigilance activities, of course, and that describes how you should have written procedures. Other than that, of course, all of these regulations, in my experience, they tend to derive the inspiration from the ISO standards. If you read GVB Module 1, it also says that a lot of the content will resonate with the ISO standard, especially the 9001 2015 quality management system standards that we have. So yeah, it's basically the flow of PDCA. I'm sure all of you would have heard of Plan, Do, Check, Act. So once we have instructions, standards, provisions for all 4 phases of PDCA, that is basically going to be the quality system for pharmacovigilance activities.
Great, thank you. So yeah, the second question is, how should the quality system be documented? Can you shed some light on the necessity of control documents, procedures, and any challenges that you may see in this area, in the quality area, from time to time?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I think quality system should be fit for purpose. What I mean by that is, if we are marketing authorization holder working from a pharma company's point of view, we should have a quality system that dictates instructions and standards for all of the activities we are doing. If we are operating as a service provider, our quality system will look slightly differently, because we will have many clients rather than just one. And all of those companies would be marketing authorization holders. So we would need to cater to those individual clients, and we will have a slightly different quality system that also interacts with the client's quality system. At the same time, if we are service providers, but not really quite PV service providers, maybe PV related service providers, you see those providers such as specialty pharmacy, even patient support program service provider. So for all of those types of service providers, they wouldn't need really the activities in case submission or all of the other aggregate report, signal detection kind of an activity. So it would be futile for them to have the instructions on all of those activities. So they would need to create a quality system that serves the purpose for their responsibilities. So yeah, it should be number one, fit for purpose, depending upon what the regulatory requirements are that apply to us as the company. And number two, it should be risk-based, of course. So we should have documented instructions for the activities that are critical. But not only that, we should have more instructions or detailed instructions, or even training materials, and also performance indicators, quite in detail, quite with rigor, for those activities that are very business critical. So, for example, if you think that there are chances of lapses in medical assessment of cases, you would need probably to have the quality system be very stringent around those activities. So yeah, basically that's the general requirement. Apart from that, I can think of course, the provisions such as having a procedure on creating other procedures. It should explain who writes the procedure, who reviews it, who approves it, and a strict format maybe we have within the company that should be abided by all the procedures. It should bear signatures, of course, to say who wrote the procedure, who approved it, with the effective date and approved date, of course. It should undergo training as well before the procedures are effective. So these are all tiny, minute details that we need to take care of when we build new procedures, of course. And a lot of the times I've observed this, that procedures are not efficiently distributed among the employees, so they don't know where to go and find the procedures. And one of the audits, in fact, I experienced this finding where the vendor told me that if employees need the procedure, they will ask for it. If they don't know how to do certain things, they'll just go around looking for the procedure. At that point, we'll give them the procedure. So that shouldn't definitely be the ideal approach. The approach should be every employee should consult the procedure on a regular basis. They should know where to go, and we should not wait for them to ask for the guidance. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Definitely.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and of course that the trainings are important, and it makes a transition for the third question. What requirements are related to training activities in a PV quality system? Can you tell us some things to consider?
Absolutely. So trainings are necessary side by side along with the documented instructions or procedures that we would have, is because not everything can be conveyed in form of a procedure. You would need hands-on coaching for the employees for those business critical activities, and they would need to learn hands-on, of course, by getting the hands-on experience and face-to-face at times, or maybe in distant training nowadays. But they would need to be taught all of these activities personally. So for those business critical activities, you would have the procedure, but you would want to build the training materials apart from the procedures. And of course, you should have a procedure for how you conduct training, how you develop training, how you evaluate the effectiveness of the training, which is very important. It should also tell us how we frequently conduct the retraining. I think that's very necessary. It's not really sufficient that we onboard an employee, train them for the first time, and just leave them be for the eternity, of course. So we need to train them from time to time so that all of the principles, all of the instructions remain fresh in their head. There can be various kinds of evaluations when it comes to checking the effectiveness of the training. You can just simply ask them to document their acknowledgement that they have understood what the training was all about. At times, for other critical trainings, you may want to prepare some quiz and have those threshold for passing criteria, and make the employees take those quiz at the end of the training. So yeah, those two points come to mind. When it comes to, I think, having different kinds of training in the company, of course, we should have trainings for all the procedures and all the activities that we are doing from the perspective of a PV department. But apart from that, what is very essential, something that I've noticed lapsing at some companies from time to time, is the safety awareness training for overall employees in the company. Yeah. So every employee is, of course, bound to have some sort of patient interaction, or at least they have the capacity or ability or potential to come across some safety information whenever they get contacted by patients. And so it is very crucial. It is required by the regulations as well. And it is very crucial, as I was saying, to train them to report those safety information, that product complaint or that adverse event, to the PV department. And that is something which is very, very vital. Regulators obviously pay a very strict attention to those trainings where we train all of the company employees on the reporting requirements in pharmacovigilance. So yeah, that's another requirement to pay a very close attention to.
Yeah, so and the question between the question about do you see those deviations within big pharmaceutical companies, mid or small pharmaceutical companies or biotechs, or yeah, you see that in different levels?
Yeah, I think I've I've seen certainly big pharma companies know that it is an obligation for them to train all of the employees on safety reporting requirements. But from time to time, there are affiliates in smaller countries where pharmacovigilance requirements are not that stringent, or they're not really well versed in, the global pharmacovigilance setting. They fail to train their employees. I think one particular instance comes to mind when it comes to, certain countries and the affiliates of big pharma companies in those countries. They fail to train their sales representatives on safety reporting requirements. And it is at times difficult to make them understand that, yes, you are not really performing pharmacovigilance activities. So we're not saying that you need to suddenly start processing cases as a sales representative. But whenever you go out in the field, you have a patient interaction, or you have an interaction with the physician, if not with patient. They may tell you about some side effects, concerns, or just complaints about the drugs. And you may want to tell us that. It's not that we would prefer that. It's required by the regulations. And that's something that is very elusive in smaller countries. And so that is something definitely to pay attention to. And another thing that I would mention would be to, of course, have training records on point. So if something is not documented, we cannot prove that it was done. So even if you would have trained all of these employees at affiliates, at your headquarters, but if you fail to produce the documented evidence of training, you cannot claim that you did the training.
Yeah, that makes sense. The fourth question, thank you for this information I'm learning also with the audience. The fourth question is, how do we manage compliance? And compliance, we hear that word at least 10 times a day within
Right.
the pharmacovigilance department. So how do we manage compliance and quality in our day-to-day PV activities? And what can be some tools that we can use to keep a track of our compliance?
Absolutely. So in all of the regulated industries, in fact, it is a requirement, more or less, to keep a check on the health of the overall process and the conduct of activities that you are required to do. So likely in pharmacovigilance processes also, we should have the measures to evaluate the performance. When I say performance, I mean adherence to quality standards and adherence to compliance requirements, of course. So we should have the measures to check both on a time-to-time basis, retrospectively. But at the same time, if you consult the regulations such as GBP Module 1, it would tell you that you should have contemporaneous performance indicators as well, so that you don't wait until audit and inspection when they tell you that, okay, your performance was not at par, your quality and compliance are lacking. You can find out those lapses, those gaps on a timely basis while you are doing the activities. So yeah, there are two ways, retrospective and concurrent. When it comes to concurrent, we are talking about, of course, the key performance indicators, key quality indicators within the company should be described in the procedure. We should have, obviously, all the KPIs for the day-to-day PV activities that we have. One example I can give is, case processing, case submission activity. If we are to evaluate quality and compliance for those activities, we can build KPIs around submission compliance. So maybe on a monthly basis, a company can evaluate how many cases were submitted on time, how many cases were late. Also, they can evaluate how many cases were exchanged with the business partner, or maybe other CROs or vendor, depending upon their safety exchange responsibilities, of course. So how many exchanges were done in a timely manner, how many exchanges were done late. So depending upon that, maybe they can have a threshold, maybe 96%, 97, 98, 99, depending upon the company, of course, the number of cases. And when you see those lapses there, you would need to, of course, take some measures to mitigate those lapses and find out the actual root cause, of course, which we may talk about later on, and try to bring the compliance and quality up again. When we talk about case quality, that's another aspect to have some performance indicators around. We can do retrospective analysis of cases. I know this is a very standard practice in all of the companies that I've worked for. They sample the cases once the cases are processed and submitted, and they check for errors. And when it comes to errors, they have two categories, maybe. One would be the critical errors, and the other one would be not so significant, not critical errors. And they would count the errors for a number of cases and see if it meets a certain threshold or not. So for each category, of course. And that can be another KPI to have. Apart from that, other time-sensitive deliverables such as aggregate reports, signal detection and management or validation report, or just any other kind of deliverable that is very time-bound. You need to move along and submit a certain thing to regulatory agency in a certain deadline. You can have those timeliness-based KPI for those. So that's concurrent way of tracking the performance, of course. The other way would be to perform the audits, which would be, periodic retrospective analysis of, those activities. So those are the two ways which we can adopt to track the performance and quality and compliance, especially in pharmacovigilance.
Wow, thank you. Definitely that. The audits are important, and this is what we will see later in this webinar. I have also some questions. So the fifth question is, as we know, we have a lot of outsourcing in the PV space. What are some crucial things to keep in mind when outsourcing any or all activities to a vendor? And how do we ensure that they are meeting the compliance requirements?
Right. That's an excellent question. It's something very near and dear to me.
Yes.
And I have seen issues, disputes from time to time when it comes to this particular topic. So I think the number one fundamental thing that I also alluded to in one of my articles, as far as I remember on LinkedIn. But anyway, the number one thing to keep in mind is, as the marketing authorization holder, you are the ultimate party responsible and accountable for your PV obligation. When you outsource certain things to a service provider, a CRO, it is not the fact that you're not responsible or accountable for those activities. Sure, you will have those contractual requirements with the vendors that will dictate, how to perform certain activities, that will also have some measures to keep their performance in check. But at the end of the day, if they make a mistake, if they screw up something, basically, you are the party responsible for fixing that. And it's the marketing authorization holder's obligation to own that particular issue, whether it is, found from some standalone deviations or maybe some deviations from revealed from the audits and inspections. So outsourcing basically doesn't really impart you any amnesty. When we talk about having those measures, those requirements for our service providers, of course, the number one thing that comes to mind would be to have a rock solid pharmacovigilance agreement or safety data exchange agreement, whatever we want to call it, of course. There can be various tiers of those documents. Maybe there are some legal documents, some contracts, some work orders, and then at the very end, of course, under all of those legal documents, maybe some document for oversight. But yes, some document for oversight is definitely necessary. And under those hierarchy, we should definitely be tracking vendors' performance and also be interacting them from time to time should we find any issues in their performance. It should also tell us, the oversight document, how we are going to work as a unit when we have to perform the audits of certain activities, if they are the ones doing those activities. Yes. Also, it should tell us, when we get inspected by regulatory agencies, obviously they need to also chip in during the management of inspections, because they are the ones who are responsible for performing those activities. So it should also describe that structure that we will have during the management of any audits or inspections. And apart from that, a crucial thing that comes to mind, which is again the subject of lapses in many of my experiences or audits, I would say, is the structure or agreement with PV related vendors. There are those vendors, as I was talking about, specialty pharmacies, patient support programs. Those are not actually PV vendors. They're not really processing cases. But again, they are the source of safety information. They should have the process for reporting safety information. So at the same time, you should have that requirement somewhere documented in the contracts with them. And that's something that I find absent in a lot of audits. A lot of marketing authorization holders will have specialty pharmacies, will have all sorts of marketing programs, or even market access program or patient support program. And they will forget the part that, these these vendors will have interactions with patients or physicians. They can receive safety information. They need to pass that information along to us, and we need to have that requirement in the agreement with them. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind, and something very critical to avoid. That's all that I can think of off the top of my head. Thank you.
And I think that it comes also with the trainings. So they will
Absolutely.
be trained, and it's an obligation, trained about the policy, adverse event policy of the company, of the MAH. So it's very important as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, last but not least, if you have PSMF and if you have all of these vendors, PSMF requires you to list all of the sources of safety information. So yeah, when you list those sources, you shouldn't forget these vendors, and it should be required by procedures that when you have new vendors, such as specialty pharmacies, patient access program, patient support program, the contract should always be reviewed by PV department, not for other technical details or their operational details. We are not the experts, of course, but at least to verify that they have that PV requirement in their agreement.
Yeah. So yeah, just to remind that the PSMF is the Pharmacovigilance System Master File. This is a term that we discussed on our weekly room on Clubhouse. So don't forget to join us on Clubhouse, Pharmacovigilance Club on Clubhouse. And of course, Kishan is one of our moderator on this club. So the next question is, can you tell us briefly about requirements for a CAPA, corrective actions and preventive actions process in the quality system? What would you say are the basic elements in this process? Are there any challenges or pitfalls that you would like to share with us?
Absolutely. So this is a very lengthy topic, so I'm going to be brief, or as brief as I can, of course. So feel free to stop me if I continue going on and on. But yeah, absolutely. So when you consider that structure of quality system, you think of that PDCA cycle, which is also adopted by a lot of the regulated industries, endorsed by ISO, also endorsed by our GBP modules and other perhaps local PV requirements. So it tells you about, plan, do, check, and act. So when you come to check, it is checking the performance as in quality and compliance, retrospectively and both concurrently, as I was describing previously. So once you identify that there is something wrong that should be investigated and that should be mitigated, you should have that CAPA process in place. So you should definitely have that procedure within the company that describes how you are going to mitigate those issues. It should tell us about the roles and responsibilities of each stakeholder involved in that process. So briefly talking about, various roles, there would be somebody who would be responsible for initiating the CAPA or corrective or preventive action or the deviation, whatever you like to call it. Then, of course, it would need to be triaged. It would need to be assigned to an investigator. Maybe there would be an investigation team led by a specific investigator. They would conduct the investigation. So that's another role. Apart from that, once they do the investigations and propose the corrections, corrective actions, and preventive actions, there should be a functional manager approver, and there should be also an independent quality assurance approval. So somebody from QA must be approving the CAPAs as well. So these are basically the roles. Some steps should be ideally time-bound. So it is not ideal that you find out the issue today, but you initiate a CAPA a month later. So maybe there should be some time-sensitive deadline or some deadline basically for initiation of CAPA. Apart from that, of course, once you launch your investigation, perhaps there should be some deadline to conclude the investigation. It cannot go on and on, of course. So maybe a month can be given to investigate the CAPA. And of course, when we come to individual actions like corrections, corrective actions, preventive actions, maybe they also should be proposed with a reasonable time frame under which they should all be concluded or completed. One thing comes to mind. Corrections, corrective action, preventive action, they tend to be sometimes confusing. We don't have really a stringent requirement on what to call what, But yeah, just as far as the understanding is concerned, correction is something that you are taking as an immediate step to fix that issue. So case is late, okay, submit it now as a correction. Corrective action is something that you're taking to fix that particular root cause that led to that issue. And preventive action is something that you would do preemptively to prevent all other similar issues. So there are, corrections and corrective actions, they often get confused. But yeah, remember that, when we're talking about elimination of root cause for that particular issue, it's corrective action, not correction. And when we are talking about, other measures, such as, okay, this particular kind of cases, we have seen too many late cases with this kind. So we are going to have a watch, an extra oversight to see if there are other late cases in the future. We will see if there are other root causes that are causing these type of cases to be late. So that is a preventive action, of course. And if you think that, somebody just forgot to mention something, somebody just forgot to do something as per the instruction, and that is the root cause, fixing that would be the corrective action. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So yeah, I hear some several keywords, and for those in the audience looking to join the PV space, so those keywords must be mentioned within a job interview about compliance, CAPA system. So it's very important that the hiring managers want to know that the applicants and candidates for PV roles, that they are aware about the CAPA systems, about the quality, about the compliance, and it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I forget something, I think I definitely would like to add this one final point on the CAPA subject. So human errors, this is something that is pet peeve of auditors and inspections, and it's coming across more and more in recent audits and inspections. So you cannot obviously have human error as the by default go-to root cause for all of the issues that you have in your company. Oh, it's the personal fault. No, that doesn't fly anymore. So when it comes to a human error as the root cause, you should have the instructions to also investigate what caused human error. So human error is just a symptom. Now, if there are no other additional root causes, maybe human error is the final root cause, but more often than not, there is something underlying, there is something that is a true root cause that is actually causing the symptom of human error. So yeah, be mindful of those. The regulators definitely want to see a thorough root cause. You can employ 5 Ives fishbone method or is not method. I have some videos or articles about that, but anyway, that would be too lengthy discussion. But yeah, don't go for human error as the scapegoat root cause for all of your CAPAs. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, definitely, and I agree 100%. The seventh question is when it comes to documentation and record for management of record management of activities, it has been more and more important to abide by data integrity principles and good documentation practice, or GDP. Can you share your experience on this subject?
Absolutely. I have a one-word answer to that question: follow Alcoa, or a two-word answer to that question: follow Alcoa. So I'm sure all of us know what Alcoa is, what Alcoa stands for. Recently, there's also some addition, some modification to it. Now it seems to be Alcoa Plus. But anyway, so Alcoa is basically attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. So that's basically the principle that we need to abide by when documenting any activity that we have done, or documenting any instruction that we have to follow. By attributable, I mean documents without documents with particular authors listed on them. So we should be able to attribute those records or those documents to particular people. Apart from that, legible is another requirement. Of course, you can't have a handwritten record and not it should be readable. It shouldn't happen that you cannot now read what you've written, or what some other person has written, or what some other person has documented. Apart from that, of course, contemporaneous, you would want to document a certain activity, a certain outcome when you are doing the activity, not a month later. And it should be original. It shouldn't be documented on something else for now, and then we will have the official documentation later. No, it should be the original documentation that should be retained and archived. And of course, it should be accurate. By accurate, I mean it should be logical to follow. And especially, when I say it should be logical to follow, now that doesn't mean that our 7-year-old cousin needs to be able to make sense of it. No, that's not what I'm talking about, of course. But at least the third person who is not familiar with that particular activity, who is at least familiar with the industry, with the activity in general, he or she should be able to make sense of that. So yeah, if it's written that way, if it's documented that way, then it is easy to follow. Yep.
Perfect. So the last question, thank you very much. The last question before I see a lot of comments and questions coming from the audience. The last question, last of my questions today is the 8th one. Can you tell us some things about business continuity in pharmacovigilance? Yeah, and we leave that we left that within the pandemic, the current pandemic. So, can you tell us some things about business continuity in pharmacovigilance? What are the quality system requirements for having a business continuity plan or BCP?
Absolutely. So yeah, BCP is a very trendy topic ever since we were hit by a pandemic. Of course, it was a requirement since before, but it's an important requirement now. It's a contingency plan, basically, that's required by regulations, where we take care of all of our mandatory activities, mandatory PV obligations when a crisis hits. And a crisis can be of different kinds, of course. So we should have a plan, a documented plan, again, which is attributable to a particular author, which is approved by the company. It cannot be just a saved PDF. That's another thing that we notice. Some documents are saved, but they are just saved from the Word versions, and they do not really bear any signatures, do not bear any date and timestamps, do not bear any author or approver name. So that shouldn't happen, of course, but I digress. So going back to BCP, we should have a documented plan to take care of all of the activities. That should describe maybe the scope, maybe, the structure of crisis management team, what sort of team we would have when we would run into any issues. It should give us, all the important contact details of the persons we need to be in touch with during any crisis. If we are not able to reach to them, via Skype or via the standard systems that we would have in the company. And of course, the detailed instructions about, how to do the activities, the bare minimum activities, if not all the activities, in an alternate manner, depending upon what the crisis is and what is infeasible. So at the end, of course, there should be a report that we can prepare, how we handle a certain crisis. Maybe that can be called BCP report. And one thing that comes to mind, which we need to definitely have in our BCP or the SOP mentioning BCP, is the periodic test. We wouldn't know if BCP works or not, what we have in the document works or not, unless we do the periodic simulations and tests. So that's definitely a requirement by regulations and something to implement. One last incident I will share, and then I'll conclude. I was doing this audit, and they had the BCP which described, how activities would be performed when they wouldn't have the access to their laptops or systems because they couldn't go into the offices. And then I asked, where is BCP? Where does that reside? And they say, on the system. So it was a plan for people to do their activities, follow that instruction when they're not able to access the system, but it was only available in the system. So sort of ironic. So yeah, you should avoid all of those pitfalls and have BCP available with the employees, proactively outside of the system too.
Perfect. Thank you. So thank you. I'm done with my questions. Usually I ask 3-4 questions, but today, with the importance of the quality and the end, its impact on our day-to-day activities. So yeah, I had many questions, and we have also questions from the audience. So let's jump to the questions from the audience and comments. So yeah, we have Janina from California saying, "Good morning, all." Yeah, it's the morning there. From Vivan from California as well. Good morning. I think that they are from the west. Good evening from the east. From Goa, India. Hello, Manoj. Attended PVQA meeting. Thank you. From Hyderabad, India. Good evening. So Vivantran say I agree. Companies should have an adverse event policy. Comes to the question: why are retrospective reports important?
Right. So, I might need some clarification on if we are talking about retrospective evaluation as an audit or inspection, or if we are talking about the ongoing concurrent reports that we have for the KPIs and the KQIs. So I think keeping a check on performance overall, when we are talking about the philosophy, so keeping a check of on performance, on the level of quality and compliance is very important, and it's required by the regulation. And also, it's something that resonates with that PDCA, so C as in check cycle. So it's very important. We cannot, again, wait for the audits and inspections to tell us what went wrong maybe 1 year ago, 2 years ago. So that's why we should have those KPIs that we can simultaneously evaluate right after performing some activities. And those are the reports that companies can prepare maybe on a weekly basis, depending upon what the activities are, or maybe fortnightly or even monthly, and see if we are trending below the desired values, the desired range, and if yes, then it should result into some mitigation and some CAPAs.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much. Arcelia, our successful graduate from Innovigilance International Academy. I will share what we provide, the training we provide at the end of this webinar. So thank you. Hello, Arcelia. Thank you for joining. And Shia, thank you. Kishan, thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience. What could be crucial to implement measures that help us to identify any non-compliance threats?
What should be the measures? Every company would have the CAPA procedure. So that should tell us how we manage all the incidences. Now, when I say all the incidences, I mean the incidences or the issues or the deviations that we come across in day-to-day life while performing the activities. Somebody notices that, okay, I've submitted the cases, but then these 10 cases were late. So now, those would be basically the standalone CAPAs. They are not from any audits or inspections, and those then should be taken into account, investigated, and mitigated with. At the same time, we have audits and inspections. They may unravel some issues, some non-compliances. And again, those particular findings then should result into, as an extension, the CAPAs. So basically, CAPA system is the robust system, is the holistic system that any company has or would have to take care of all such issues, whether they are coming from an audit or they are coming from just somebody's observation, or they are coming from these concurrent KPI evaluations.
Thank you. Yeah. So the other question. So or comment. Thanks for clarifying corrective, and preventive actions. It's generally misunderstood. And believe me that I learned this just today during this webinar. So thank you. Thank you very much. Please share your experience from Nirav. Please share your experience on risk-based audits and remote audits during pandemic times.
Absolutely. Again, this is something that I do for a living, so I can go on and on, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. So I think risk-based auditing is a factor regardless of the audit being remote or on site. So when we, as the marketing authorization holder, begin the fiscal year or just the calendar year, depending upon how we operate, we need to have identified or pre-identified audit targets. We'll have a set of business partners, we'll have vendors to audit, we'll have internal systems and processes to audit. So there may be many audit targets in a given year. And of course, it is not feasible nor ideal or recommended to keep auditing everything every single year. That's just a waste of resources. So how we audit each audit target with what frequency and whom we need to audit first and among the audit targets is something that can be found out by the risk-based analysis of audit targets. So we should have this predefined criteria. We should subject each audit target through those criteria and find out, how risky they are, or whether we need to prioritize that audit or not. So depending upon that, we should schedule the audit for that particular year. When we find out, the issues or the findings that we uncovered from those audits, again, we would need those information at the time of the risk-based analysis for the next fiscal year, when we would feed that information in. If something had a lot of issues, like 10 findings, maybe we would need to audit them slightly sooner, maybe within the next 2 years. And maybe if they didn't have any finding, maybe we can wait until 3 or 4 years. So those risk-based auditing principles, as they're called, long-term audit planning, if you refer to GBP Module 4, strategic and tactical planning, they all of these requirements and evaluations and algorithms and assessments should be documented in the procedure. When it comes to remote auditing, that's just basically another way of auditing, and we should again strive to achieve the same goal as far as the audit is concerned. If it is not possible to audit with the same rigor that we would in an on-site audit, maybe there should be a very soon follow-up audit that should happen on site. But in pharmacovigilance, more often, all of the audits can be accommodated remotely and can be done with the same or almost the same efficiency. So yeah, I don't see any difference. You just need to be mindful of, there are no technological snags like, in the middle of an audit, you shouldn't be disconnected from the auditing. That's the only thing to keep in mind.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. So great examples. Question from Vivan from California. I know, hello Vivan, so thank you. And I know that she waited to join and waited for this webinar since weeks ago. So while a sponsor is preparing for a pivotal trial, phase 3, sometimes phase 2, what activities are recommended for the PV department to ensure its inspection readiness?
That's a very great question. I think that's very specific to those trials. So I don't have the recent exposure to products that are particularly in those phases. But generally, I think if you think about any process in PV, you should always be inspection ready. Now, by that, I don't mean that you should have all the logistics in place. Of course, once the inspection is announced, you would need to prepare the logistics. You will need to form the team, assign some inspection administrator or manager, and maybe create a back room and bring on those resources from all the company departments to handle the audit or the inspection agenda that you would have. So all of those things can follow. Although I think when it comes to FDA inspections, they are more often than not very unannounced. So they just show up. So you should have that provision so that you can attend to the inspectors and then build up all of these resources or logistics very quickly once the inspectors arrive. But I think in the future, there is some likelihood that they would also announce the inspection, because not everybody is working on site. A lot of people are working remotely. So, well, anyway, I think the goal ideally should be to be always inspection ready, have all the documents in the designated document management system, or maybe in the storage facility if they are paper documents ready. Nothing should be left to be done at a later point, so we don't have to scramble at times of inspection. Yeah, that's some of the general tip that I can give. Maybe there are specific points that one can make about products being inspected in those particular phases, but that is something that I definitely follow up on.
Perfect. Thank you. The next questions from Midhat. Thanks. Thank you, Dr. Kishan. That's flowers. As you know, we see vaccines development speed up during the global pandemic. Everything's different this time, like clinical trials, times, and data collection, and many other issues. My question, or the question is, what is the lessons learned during the COVID-19 crisis regarding regulatory affairs activity?
Right. So that's, I think, a good question for somebody who is working in a company where these vaccines are being manufactured, or somebody who's working in just the regulatory affairs department. I think from PV standpoint, as far as I know, the vaccines have got expedited or temporary approval, if you will, and now they are getting. I think Pfizer already got one. If correct me if I'm wrong, of course. So they got the thorough or final approval. So one thing to keep in mind from PV perspective would be to have the periodic reports, the signal detection, signal management activities on point. We are in the early phases, of course, so we may not know some long-term side effects that may be there with all of these products or vaccines. So that is something to be extra attentive to should we encounter any of those signals during our aggregate data analysis, or even from the single adverse event report. So that's something to pay attention to, and of course keep the regulatory authorities also in the loop for.
Perfect. Thank you, Midhat. Thank you, Kishan. The next question is from Jihan. So yeah, Jihan is a friend. Hello, Jihan. Thank you, and thank you for joining and following our webinar today. So yeah, it's a great question. As she usually. Can you please confirm if quality and PV must be two distinct departments in the structure of a pharmaceutical company? Thank you.
I love that question. So, all right, yes and no. So when it comes to the day-to-day oversight of PV activities, the concurrent evaluations, the KPIs, the KQIs, all of those, we can be definitely part of the same team. It's basically the QC function. If you are doing the activity, I'm responsible for generating the KPIs for those activities. We can be again in the same chain of command. We can be in the same department responsible for those activities, and I can do the QC. I can generate the KPIs, and if there are issues that are found, maybe we can escalate those issues. So yes, when it comes to quality assurance, now that's a definitely separate team and has to be a separate team. Why? Because we are also supposed to do the retrospective analysis in form of audit and inspection, and you can't really objectively evaluate something if you are part of the activities yourself. So for the sake of independence, that's again the same principle that you would see in ISO 9001 2015, or even ISO 19001 2018 auditor's guide, basically. Correct me if I'm wrong about the year, but anyway. Yep. So yeah, I think the independence and objectivity are of paramount importance when it comes to quality assurance. So QA department should definitely be separate from the actual function in business. They shouldn't have any association as far as chain of command is concerned, because I might be if I'm reporting to the person who is also the head of that particular activity, or is responsible for that particular activity, or at least accountable, I might be apprehensive or fearsome in giving the findings to that person. So because that doesn't happen, because we can do it independently, or our evaluations can be independent and objective as much as it can be, the QA department needs to definitely set separately. Now, that doesn't mean you cannot have ongoing interactions, debates, and consultation. Absolutely. But at least you shouldn't have that chain of command association.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Kishan. And thank you, Jihan, for this question. Arcelia, I know that, and we talked about that last week, that she is also very interested about to be involved in quality. She has a great experience in pharmacovigilance as well. She's very interested to be an auditor and to be involved more in quality. So this question, the second question from Arcelia, can you please tell us a bit about Alcoa Plus? Alcoa Plus.
Absolutely. So that's something that has evolved from Alcoa, of course, which I was previously talking about. I think Alcoa Plus is, if I'm not wrong, it's the few additional principles that accounts for, I think, consistency, completeness, and durable or endurable, I think, something like that. But basically, the expectation there is that the data should be complete, It shouldn't be that the documentation provides or indicates the activity up to a certain point, but it doesn't account for some of the final outcomes, some of the final results of that activity. No, it should be a complete documentation. It should be consistent. So, of course, it should be documented in a consistent manner, in a manner that all other previous documentations for the same activity were done. And durable, I think it should mean that we should be able to preserve the records or the documents for as long as required. So I think for PV activities, of course, we have 10-year requirement in the FDA. Correct me if I'm wrong. And in Canada and EMA, we have, or EU, we have 25-year requirements. So of course, our safety database will have those documents. There'll be no problem in retaining those. But I see sometimes from time to time, I see in some of those audits where we have certain activities documented outside of any system that is validated. It's just maybe an email, or it's just maybe a file or a document that sits somewhere on somebody's laptop, and it then gets lost. Where as soon as the person leaves the company, or as soon as the laptop is switched. So that shouldn't happen. It should be durable. It should be preserved for as long as required, and there should be a definite instruction on how to transfer paper records or electronic records to a designated system or a storage file or a cabinet, and how we can retain those until they are no longer necessary.
Thank you. The next question. So yeah, this thanks Dr. Omar and Innovigilance and RX course and Kishan for organizing such valuable meeting. Thank you, Mithat, for joining and for following our webinars. Hi Omar and Kishan, good morning. I guess it's from the West Coast. Thanks, very insightful from Nirav. So from Shipra, how to determine if an observation should be critical, major, or minor? Please explain with examples. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think this calls for a lengthy discussion, but for the interest of time, I think one answer I can provide is, go read GVP Module 4. It does have the breakdown of what should qualify as critical, what should qualify as major, what should qualify as minor. Critical is, of course, the systematic failure of a very critical kind. The major would be maybe a lot of the minor issues put together in a repetitive manner. But of course, major is also a fundamental lapse that impacts our regulatory deliverable. And minor is something that doesn't really have as much of an impact to patient safety or the regulatory compliance, but it is something that we should definitely fix. It is maybe a deviation from the ideal way of doing those things. There are lengthy definitions, of course, that the companies would have in their audit procedures. And of course, they're all derived, or at least they resonate with the GVP Module 4. So yeah, definitely it should be consulted, and maybe you have some specific things, some specific criteria, depending upon the types of audits that you're doing, that you would need to account for in your definitions of critical, major, minor observations. But yeah, the information or the inspiration comes from the regulations, mainly GVP Module 4.
Perfect, thank you. Just to remind about the acronym GVP and Module 4. GVP is Good Pharmacovigilance Practices. The module from the EMA, European Medicine Agency. The Module 4 is about pharmacovigilance audits. So there's different modules. And the Module 4 is about pharmacovigilance audits. Thank you. From Rishiraj, hi Kishan. Can you share your suggestions on increasing ICSRs, individual case safety reports, ICSR quality, and also best practices to assess the vendor quality and compliance related to ICSRs?
Sure. So I think as far as increasing the ICSR quality is concerned, having the fit for purpose documented instruction. So you should have the SOPs written in a way that they're palatable for all of those who are conducting the activity. That's number one. Number two is to have the designated trainings for the critical activities that are not just coachable from having the procedures, but you need to train the people to make them familiar with the requirements. So you should have you should focus on, of course, building those interactive trainings. It shouldn't be boring, shouldn't be just go read this PowerPoint presentation. So maybe focus on having a rigorous training material, or having the detailed and interactive training material. Another thing that I can definitely suggest is how important it is to train the trainer. All of us are perhaps experts in the activities that we are doing, but that doesn't mean that we are going to be very thorough when we talk about explaining the requirements or explaining the activities to other people. So if we don't have a prior experience as a trainer, I think there are going to be some gaps there in how we communicate those requirements. So I think it's of paramount importance. It's very vital that at least we first train the trainer, make them familiar with the general best practices for training activities, so that they are very well equipped, confident on what they are going to communicate, and they can then go and train the employees, whether in-house or at the vendor. So that's very important. Otherwise, training is one of those just formal activities that you need to attend, but you have no idea what was just communicated. So I think that having that is important. And other than that, just keep a check on how the process is going. Have good KPIs and KQIs, and don't be apprehensive when it comes to initiating CAPAs or deviations. A lot of the times, a lot of the companies have this culture where if you have CAPAs, people are blamed. That shouldn't be the ideal work environment, of course. So we should strive for a culture where what went wrong is important rather than who did it. And so if you create that, yeah, exactly. So if you create that culture of quality and that blame-free environment, I think people would be more transparent. They would be speaking up whenever they identify any issues, and that just would result in a process, a very effective CAPA process, where we take care of the issues before it transform into a major issue or a major problem down the road. So I think that's another advice that I can give.
Thank you. Yeah, so very important topic for current vigilance. Yeah, 100%. Jihan, thanks so much. So well explained. Jihan is a drug safety physician with a broad experience, and I challenge her, is my friend, to be my guest. And in English or in French, she's bilingual, so we can do that in French as well. So, AK, hi Kishan, in a PV department, the QR or quality reviewer and medical reviewer, MR, need to be different departments. I guess QR and MR is quality reviewer and medical reviewer.
I should hope so.
Yeah, need to be different departments or different people. Who should be doing?
Right. So I think, it's generally a practice that, you have the ongoing QC of the data that has been entered, and it is not really necessarily the medical reviewer. It is just to ensure that the data that has been entered from the source document is accurate. There is nothing that is left behind. There's nothing that is misinterpreted or documented otherwise, which is not accurate. So it is the practice that I've seen where you have a set of people doing the QC, and you can again process the cases. You cannot do your own QC. Ideally, you shouldn't, but you can process cases and you can QC cases for of the cases that are processed by other personnel. And at the same time, of course, there would be a medical review step, which is generally needed to be done by somebody who is a physician. So their responsibility would be obviously to check the data integrity in general, the accuracy in general, and of course determine causality, expectedness, and seriousness, and make sure that they are on point. Those three values in any case that are very critical. To answer your question, I think generally I've seen QC and MR to be separate people in the workflow.
Perfect, thank you. How can a QP evaluate ICSRs and ADRs from product compliance? Are there any guidelines available?
Right. So I think the concept of an adverse event or safety information remains consistent no matter what the material in front of you is. So even if it's a medical query, if some information conveyed to you during the medical inquiry uh, qualifies as the definition of safety information or a reportable adverse event or a potential adverse event, you should document that. So when you have product quality complaints, I think one thing to keep in mind would be to look for any side effects that the patient is talking about, any discomforts, any performance complaints. Another adverse event that we typically have from product complaints, performance issues, lack of efficacy reports, as we call them. So if we see reference or mention to any of those safety related concerns or performance related concerns in product quality complaint reports, it should be treated as the safety report, and of course the information should be logged in within the safety database as the AE.
Yeah, safety data exchange agreement. Thank you. We wrap automation, and this is a great question. Automation affect pharmacovigilance and quality in pharmacovigilance?
I'm not sure. I'm still learning about automation and artificial intelligence in pharmacovigilance. Not sure what RAP is, but I think that's the direction we seem to be heading to. There'd be a tremendous dearth of people who are experienced in PV and experienced in automation and artificial intelligence. If somebody in school and college is looking forward to joining some PV field which is going to be in super demand in the future, that should be something to consider. But yeah, I think automation in pharmacovigilance is happening and is going to speed up also in the near future. I think it's going to require us also to consider different methods for evaluating processes that are being automated. So I'm sure as auditors also, all of us will have to work hard to understand the systems and the tools that are used for automation so that we can then evaluate if they are working perfectly or not. But yeah, in general, I think from my experience, I see a lot of companies in the direction of adopting automation for data entry and other workflow activities and case processing, and it's inevitable.
Perfect. Thank you. The next one. Yeah, this is for the first question, I think, from Raj. Hi, Kishan. As Omar informed you, make videos on YouTube related to PV. Please share your YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, so if you just search for my name, Kishan Nanda, I think you'll find the YouTube channel. It's the name of the channel anyway. I am still learning. I'm still learning the art of video making, so I'm not really good at editing as of yet. I think you would find the content very intriguing. I try my best, of course, but that's something to learn from even Dr. Omar or just other YouTubers out there who are also in PV or maybe other regulated industries, those who make content about those topics. So feel free to connect. I have a video coming up on exactly what KPIs we can use in case processing activities. But yeah, you'd find definitely some of those conversations intriguing, if not the quality of the video from the editing perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm too old to be a YouTuber. It makes my kids laughing. But yeah, of course, we are sharing all our webinars on InnoVigilance YouTube channel as well. So yeah, thank you, Kishan. Another question from Owais. What is the role of MR in PV? Thank you so much for your time, Kishan and Omar, for conducting this session. So yeah, appreciate it. Thank you always for joining and following our events.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think MR means perhaps a medical review, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, at times it means also medical representatives. I think that's another point. If I circle back to good documentation practice requirement, again, it's perfectly fine as far as this comment is concerned. This is not a documentation of any kind, so please don't feel as if I'm calling you out. But no, it just reminded me of one of those expectations that we have in quality system where we use acronyms and abbreviations in official documents and fail to explain what they actually mean. Sometimes, I've seen MA meaning in the same document, medical affairs and then medical assessment. So I don't know. Maybe I should be playing a guess game, and if that's the case, maybe they should reward me if I got it right. So, but anyway, the point is that you should definitely provide the full form when you're using an acronym or an abbreviation for the first time in the official documentation. I think as far as this question is concerned, it's definitely perfectly fine as we are just interacting. So medical review is the activity in which we assess causality, seriousness, and expectedness. So those are the criteria for any good medical review of any safety case, and it is generally performed by a physician, as I was mentioning. And of course, apart from that, you may need to check other data as well, just for the sake of the accuracy and integrity, and also the overall information provided in the narrative. Another thing that you should keep in mind, which is also nowadays a huge concern with a lot of regulatory agencies, is disclosure of private and sensitive patient information. A lot of the times, case processors or data entry personnel forget to remove those identifiers from the narrative or from those other case fields, and that is something to definitely prevent. We have HIPAA regulation in the US. We have GDPR in the Europe, and of course we have a California specific privacy regulation as well that we need to now follow. So I think that is also something to keep in mind if we have inadvertently disclosed some patient information which we shouldn't.
100%, yeah. So always, of course, yeah, and for the audience, that we have a lecture within our course about the medical review, the quality review, the causality assessment, expectedness assessment, all of that. Just also for the audience, just visit the website innovigilance.com, and you will have more and more information. Thank you very much. We have a lot of questions, so we don't have enough time, but we will take the two last questions. So from Laik, kindly share any guidelines or advice to manage the compliance issue aggregate reporting.
Sure. So when I see compliance issues for aggregate reporting, or for any activity, you need to approach it from the two perspectives. One is, the submission compliance. So if something needs to be submitted, if it is not submitted in that particular deadline, you have a compliance issue. And you need to investigate, of course, what led to the non-compliance, why the report wasn't submitted. It wasn't authored, it wasn't QC'd, it wasn't approved, or it wasn't, or maybe there was some technological issue in submitting the report. So that's the submission compliance for any deliverable that needs to be submitted. Other than that, I think the other kind of compliance that you should account for is the quality of the deliverable. So you should definitely consider whether the outcome or the finalized deliverable looks like what is expected by the regulatory agency. If they have a specific format, I'm sure they do for PSUR. So if all of the sections, all of the details are part of your report, or if they are at least addressed, if there is an information, there isn't any information in some of the sections, at least it should be clarified. So compliance to the standards of a particular deliverable and the quality of a particular deliverable is another factor to account for. That's all I can say for now, I think.
Thank you. The last one. Thank you, Kishan. The last one is, what is the qualification for a medical reviewer? I think that we have a lot of physicians today. What is the qualification for medical reviewer? Will it include physicians, dentists, and PharmDs? The question is for you. I have the answer, but the question is for you.
No, I think you're a better person to answer many of these questions, but especially this one. So definitely go ahead. I know that physicians are more than capable of being medical reviewers, but Dr. Omar, what about PharmD personnel, or even physicians who are maybe dentists?
Yeah, the medical reviewer should be 99% a physician, medical doctor. All the companies are looking for MDs to join and to have the medical reviewer position. There's some exceptions, but definitely medical reviewer is for physicians, and of course, as a PharmD, I really acknowledge the part of physicians and their contribution in pharmacovigilance and drug safety space, and it's very, very important.
Absolutely.
Lucas say thank you, Dr. Omar and Mr. Kishan, for providing such successful. Thank you, Kishan. I appreciate the response. So there's a lot of acknowledgement. Thank you. The remaining time I would just share information about our certification, pharmacovigilance and drug safety certification. So just know, for those that don't know already, that InnoVigilance International Academy is providing drug safety and pharmacovigilance certificate course, QPDS accreditation, which is qualified professional in drug safety and pharmacovigilance, recognized by the American Society in Pharmacovigilance. This is also a course developed with the amazing team RX course and Dr. Shams. Thank you, Shams, for your technical support also for this webinar and our webinars. Thank you so much. He's backstage. Thank you very much for that. For any information, please visit our website, www.innovigilance.com. We have students from all over the world, successful graduates from North America, from Central America, from Latin America, from Europe, from Africa, from Middle East. So just you can reach out to us, and we will be happy to provide more information. Also, follow us on LinkedIn, and we have also the InnoVigilance International Academy company page on our LinkedIn page on LinkedIn. And of course, as I mentioned, also follow us on Clubhouse. There's an amazing weekly room on every Wednesday at noon or at 12 p.m. We are discussing a lot of topics, important topics, audio. All of you can also interact and comment and participate, not like this webinar, but Kishan is here to share every week his experience and insightful inputs. Katayon, our moderator, Dr. Shams as well, Pinak, Vivan, and all the amazing people. Thank you. There's also some headhunters joining also our weekly room. So this is important. Please do.
About time. Yep.
Also, Kishan, I forgot to add your LinkedIn profile. So join Kishan LinkedIn page. This is important to interact. The networking is very important. I will also, hopefully, I will meet you, Kishan, in the World Drug Safety Congress in Boston in October. Also, the next webinar will be in September, the last Saturday. We will announce for that. And please, also, there's a surprise next October. They will be alive, but I don't want to share more details. Stay tuned. Thank you, Kishan. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining, for accepting. You're just an amazing person and a very, very generous person. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Umar. Thank you, everyone who asked the questions and who participated in this webinar. And yeah, it was lovely interacting with you all. Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Of course, thanks to the audience. Thank you for joining and for your time. See you next month.